There's a moment, quiet, subtle, almost invisible, when a person realizes that life has never been responding to what they want, but to who they are. And if they listen closely, they might hear the whisper beneath every frustration, every delay, every cycle that keeps repeating, "You don't receive what you desire, you receive what you embody." Neville Goddard built his entire teaching on this paradox. You become it first, and only then does the world reveal it to you. Most people have this backwards, and that's why their desires remain distant, like stars they can see but never touch. But what if the distance was never real? What if the version of you who already has everything you desire isn't in the future at all? What if it's a state that already exists, waiting for you to step into it? You felt glimpses of it before, those moments where you suddenly felt capable, chosen, confident, abundant, and for a second, life seemed to rearrange itself around that identity. That wasn't luck, that was alignment. And when you understand this, truly understand it, you stop waiting for signs and start becoming the sign. You stop chasing outcomes and start embodying the version of you who naturally attracts them. This video is the shift you've been trying to force, explained from the inside out. By the time you finish watching, you will feel something moving inside you, a knowing, a subtle recognition, because the truth was never complicated. It was simply unfamiliar, until now. There's a moment in life when a person looks around and quietly wonders, why does nothing change no matter how much I try? And it's in that moment, usually when the mind is tired and the heart is restless, that the real truth finally becomes loud enough to be heard. Not the truth we were taught growing up, but the truth we feel in our bones. Nothing out there moves until something in here shifts. Neville Goddard tried to tell us this for years, but most people only understand it intellectually, not experientially. They keep waiting for life to prove something before allowing themselves to believe. But what if the proof never comes first? What if the identity shift law of assumption doesn't wait for external evidence? What if the real doorway opens only when you dare to become it first, before the 3D gives you a single sign? Imagine hearing that as a child in a world where everyone told you to wait and see. No wonder people feel stuck. They're waiting for the world to reflect an image they never chose to wear. When someone finally grasps that imagination creates reality, something strange happens inside them. It's subtle, like a quiet click in the mind, yet powerful enough to alter the course of their life. They begin to sense what Neville truly meant when he said creation is finished. Suddenly, living in the end stops sounding like wishful thinking and starts feeling like the only thing that ever made sense. Because deep down, they've always known. The wish-fulfilled Neville method isn't about the future at all. It's about memory, a memory of the self they were meant to grow into. And maybe this is why you're here. Maybe this is your moment. The one where you stop searching for signs and finally allow yourself to become the version of you who no longer chases outcomes. The one who embodies them, who breathes them. Who knows? Without needing to be convinced, that feeling is the secret, and feeling it real explained everything that life had been whispering all along. If you're willing, I'll walk with you through every layer of this, not as a teacher, but as someone who has fallen, risen, doubted, tried again, and finally realized that assuming the end Neville Goddard style isn't a technique, it's a return home. A return to the self you've been avoiding out of habit, fear, or the simple belief that you weren't ready yet. But you are, and by the time we finish, something in you will shift, quietly, unmistakably, because once you see who you truly are, the world can only follow. There's something deeply liberating about realizing that nothing in the outer world has the power to start your manifestation. A person can spend years trying to fix circumstances, rearrange people, or chase opportunities, but nothing truly changes until the inner identity changes first. Neville Goddard used to say that imagination creates reality, and it wasn't poetic metaphysics, it was practical truth. When someone looks at their desire and thinks, "I'll feel it once it happens," they're already delaying their own becoming. The shift begins the moment they decide to live in the end, even while the world still looks the same. Think about someone waking up every day feeling like life owes them a sign. They check their bank account, their phone, the news, waiting for something, anything to show progress. But this waiting energy carries the identity of someone who doesn't have it yet, and the law of assumption simply reflects that state back. Becoming it first. Neville Goddard style isn't pretending, it's choosing a new internal posture. It's like deciding to walk differently before your legs even believe they're strong enough. Imagine a woman who wants financial freedom, but keeps repeating stories she learned growing up. Money is hard. Abundance is for others. These phrases are small, but they shape identity, and identity shapes destiny. When she gently shifts into the version of herself who already lives with ease, she starts making different choices, and those choices invite different outcomes. Identity shift law of assumption works quietly, like adjusting the steering wheel of a car without announcing it. The world responds to who she is, not what she wants. This is why Neville's wish-fulfilled method doesn't begin with asking, it begins with assuming the inner position of someone whose desire is already normal. It's not about forcing confidence, it's about recognizing that the old self simply cannot lead you to a new life. And that's not a punishment, it's a beautiful design. The desire itself is the invitation to become the next version of you. Picture someone learning a skill like playing the piano. At first everything feels awkward. The fingers don't obey, the rhythm doesn't flow. But the moment they start identifying as a person who plays, not a beginner who hopes, progress accelerates. Manifestation works the same way. Becoming at first isn't about perfection, it's about adopting the identity that naturally expresses your desire. Creation is finished, Neville said, and the finished version of you already exists. Some people resist this because they think it's dishonest to feel like they already have something they can't yet touch. But that belief comes from misunderstanding feeling it real explained. Feeling doesn't mean faking. It means selecting an inner atmosphere that aligns with the state you prefer. It's like remembering a memory that hasn't happened yet. And the moment you begin to treat that memory as familiar, the world begins to echo it back. Everything transforms when a person understands that the 3D world isn't the cause, it's the mirror. They stop trying to rearrange the reflection and finally work on the face staring into the glass. When someone embodies the feeling of the fulfilled self, they behave differently without trying. They breathe differently. Their tone shifts. People respond to them differently, and slowly, reality bends to meet their new center of gravity. Even relationships begin to reflect this shift. When someone identifies as unworthy, they attract situations that confirm that identity. But when they become someone who is deeply valued, internally, others have no choice but to mirror it. This is why live in the end isn't escapism, it's alignment. The world can only return what you send out. It's not spiritual punishment, it's spiritual precision. In truth, becoming the version of yourself who has the desire is less about effort and more about permission. Permission to stop waiting, permission to stop doubting, permission to stop telling the old story just because it's familiar. Neville Goddard often said that feeling is the secret, not thinking, not wishing, not forcing. The feeling of already being the person who has what you want is the seed that grows your new reality. And once this clicks, even in the smallest way, the person begins to notice that the world subtly softens around them. Opportunities appear, synchronicities increase, a sense of inner steadiness arises, because manifestation never bursts from the outside in, it blooms from the inside out. And this natural unfolding gently sets the stage for the next realization, which is where the journey becomes even more interesting. There's a quiet power in realizing that nothing you desire needs to be created from scratch. Neville Goddard taught that creation is finished, meaning every version of you already exists as a state of consciousness waiting to be occupied. It's like walking into a room filled with thousands of costumes, each one representing a different identity, and the moment you choose one, the world begins responding to that choice. People spend years struggling because they think their wish needs to be built, when in truth it only needs to be selected. Imagine someone who keeps saying, "One day I'll get there," not knowing that there already exists as a state they can step into now. The identity shift law of assumption isn't about forcing yourself into a delusion. It's about tuning into the frequency of the self who already lives the life you want. When you assume the end Neville Goddard style, you're not conjuring something imaginary. You're aligning with a version of yourself that already breathes in a different rhythm. Think about a teacher in a classroom who doesn't wait for the students to behave before deciding to be confident. The confidence comes first. The behavior follows. The same happens when you enter the wish-fulfilled Neville method. The world begins to rearrange itself, not because you're controlling it, but because your inner state leaves no room for the old story to continue. People feel it. Circumstances shift. Opportunities appear in ways that almost feel orchestrated. Neville often said that imagination creates reality, and this isn't metaphorical. When you enter a state internally, your decisions start to match that identity. A person who embodies abundance naturally gravitates toward choices that expand them, Someone who lives in the end of love naturally softens their tone and opens their heart in ways they never forced. The identity pulls the behavior, not the other way around. There's a beautiful moment when someone finally slips into the state of their fulfilled self. It feels like returning home to a version of themselves they've always known, but never dared to fully inhabit. Sometimes it's as simple as closing their eyes and capturing a 5-second scene of already living it. Feeling it real, explained, becomes clear at that moment. It's not a ritual, it's a recognition of who you're choosing to be. Life responds quickly to embodied identity. For example, a person who assumes the identity of someone healthy begins to crave different foods or get impulses to move their body. Another who assumes wealth suddenly notices opportunities they swore weren't there before. This isn't magic, it's perception aligning with identity. When you shift states, you shift what your mind is capable of noticing. Some people fear assuming a new state because the old one feels so familiar. But comfort is not confirmation. Many live in states that drain them simply because they've worn them for too long. Shifting into the fulfilled self often feels like stepping into a new pair of shoes, strange for a moment, but soon perfectly natural. And when it becomes natural, the world mirrors it back effortlessly. Imagine a person stuck in a scarcity mindset, always worried about losing. The moment they step into a state of ease, even for a few seconds, their energy changes. They breathe differently. They speak differently. They stop gripping life so tightly. That small shift is enough to begin the law of assumptions rearranging process. Circumstances start loosening around them like knots being quietly untied. Neville's teaching that every state exists now is liberating because it removes all waiting. You don't wait for success to feel successful. You don't wait for love to feel loved. You don't wait for opportunities to feel chosen. You choose the feeling first. Feeling is the secret, not the reward. When this becomes your way of being, you stop chasing life and life begins chasing you. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Once you realize that states already exist, you start to understand the true mistake people make. But that's the next piece of this journey, and it opens an entirely new door. One of the greatest traps people fall into is believing they need proof before they can allow themselves to change. They wait for life to give them permission, for circumstances to show progress, or for someone to validate that they're finally on the right path. But Neville Goddard taught the opposite. Evidence is the final echo, not the starting bell. When someone insists on waiting to see results before embodying their new identity, they unknowingly reinforce the state of not having. And the law of assumption can only return what you assume to be true inside. Think of a gardener who refuses to water the soil until the tree grows. Absurd, right? Yet so many people do this with their desires. They say, "I'll feel different once I see change," not realizing that creation is finished. Neville style means the change begins inside them first. Becoming it first, Neville Goddard, is not optional. It's the foundation. And the moment they understand that evidence is simply delayed confirmation, they stop demanding signs and start living from certainty. Imagine someone checking their bank account every morning, hoping to feel wealthy. That act alone announces to the subconscious, "I am not the person who has abundance yet." But when they instead assume the identity of someone whose abundance is normal, they stop obsessing over numbers. Their energy shifts, their posture shifts, their decisions shift. Feeling it real, explained, becomes obvious. Identity comes first. Receipts come last. This mistake, waiting for evidence, is rooted in fear. People want guarantees before they let themselves believe. They say, "I don't want to be disappointed." But disappointment only exists when someone clings to the old identity while hoping for the new. When they fully step into the wish-fulfilled Neville method, disappointment dissolves because the feeling of fulfillment becomes their internal truth long before the world catches up. Consider a person trying to manifest love. They keep refreshing messages, analyzing silence, and reading between the lines. Each action reinforces the identity of someone waiting, not someone chosen. But when they step into the state of being loved, really feeling the warmth of it, the need for external validation evaporates. And paradoxically, that's when the evidence appears. The 3D world behaves like a mirror. It cannot move until you do. Waiting for evidence is like standing in front of a mirror, refusing to smile until the reflection smiles first. It doesn't work. The reflection always comes after the expression. This is the essence of life in the end. You choose the inner expression, your identity, and the mirror rearranges accordingly. It's predictable, not mystical. Some people try to hack the process by acting as if, but acting is different from assuming. Acting feels like pretending. Assuming feels like choosing. Pretending keeps you aware of what's missing. Choosing immerses you in who you already are. The difference is subtle but life-changing. When someone assumes, they don't feel like they're faking. They feel like they're remembering. Waiting for evidence also traps people in endless cycles of doubt. They assume for 5 seconds, then look around and say, nothing changed. But the 3D world takes time to reorganize itself around a new state. Neville compared this to traveling to a new city. The moment you board the plane, your destination is set, even if you're still physically in the old place. Identity works exactly the same way. Assumption is the first step, because it activates the state that contains the experience you want. Evidence is just the shadow cast by that state. When you understand this, you stop chasing shadows and start stepping into the light. You become the cause, not the effect. And as you shift, the world inevitably follows, because it has no choice. But now that the mistake is clear, the next step is understanding what becoming it first truly feels like. And that's where the next topic begins. There's a beautiful moment in every manifestation journey when a person stops treating their desire as something distant and begins to experience it as familiar. This shift, this sense of naturalness, is what Neville Goddard meant when he taught that feeling is the secret. Becoming it first. Neville Goddard's style isn't about forcing excitement or pretending to be someone else. It's about slipping into a version of yourself that feels strangely comfortable, like a memory you forgot you had. When your desire stops feeling extraordinary and becomes ordinary, that's when the law of assumption begins to work effortlessly. Think of someone stepping into a warm room after being out in the cold. At first, they notice the difference intensely, but within minutes the warmth feels normal. In the same way, the wish-fulfilled Neville method might feel strange at first, but with repetition, it becomes natural. The goal is not to feel fireworks. The goal is to feel, this is who I am now. That naturalness is the signal the subconscious responds to. It doesn't respond to forcing, begging, or hoping, only to acceptance. Some people struggle because they believe their desire must feel intense or emotional every time. But Neville never said intensity creates reality. Identity does. Just like someone doesn't walk around shouting, I am a homeowner, all day after buying a house, the fulfilled self doesn't live in constant excitement. They live in normalcy. They breathe the state without effort. Feeling it real explained is simply this. The end becomes your new baseline, not a fantasy you visit occasionally. Imagine a person manifesting confidence. At first they try to act confident, straightening their shoulders, adjusting their voice. But true confidence doesn't feel like performing. It feels like ease. The same is true for manifesting money, love, health, whatever the desire is. When it starts feeling natural, you stop checking the 3D world for proof. You're no longer waiting, you're being. And that being quietly reshapes the external world in ways thought cannot. Neville said that the moment a desire feels natural, it must objectify itself. This means the outer world organizes around your inner acceptance. Think of someone learning to drive. At first, every movement feels mechanical and awkward, but over time, it becomes second nature. They no longer think about turning the wheel or pressing the pedals. They simply drive. Manifestation works the same way. When the state becomes natural, you stop thinking about how and start living the result. Some people confuse fantasy with assumption. Fantasy feels far away, like something you'd love to experience someday. Assumption feels close, like something you've already lived. When you step into the end Neville Goddard style, you stop imagining the desire as future and begin experiencing it as now. The subconscious doesn't understand timelines, it understands states. And when you inhabit a state consistently, your reality must match it. Notice how a person who feels naturally abundant behaves differently. They don't panic when a bill arrives. They don't obsess over small inconveniences. Their actions come from a calm certainty instead of a desperate need. This naturalness signals that they have truly shifted identity. And because imagination creates reality, the world must eventually reflect that shift, even if nothing appears to move at first. The more natural the desire feels, the easier it becomes to persist. When someone forces a feeling, they eventually burn out. But when they embrace the naturalness of the fulfilled state, persistence becomes effortless. They're not trying to hold on to anything. They're simply returning to their inner home. It's like wearing a comfortable sweater. You don't have to remind yourself to keep it on. Think of naturalness as the thermostat of manifestation. When you shift the inner temperature, the outer world adjusts automatically. You don't stand over the heater yelling at it to work. You trust the system. The same applies to the law of assumption. Once you feel the naturalness of the end, you've set the inner thermostat. The rest is simply unfolding. And now that naturalness is understood, the next question becomes, how do you practice stepping into that fulfilled life? And that's exactly where the next topic leads. The power of this practice lies in its simplicity. Most people overcomplicate manifestation because they think they need elaborate scenes or dramatic visualizations. But Neville Goddard emphasized that a single, ordinary moment, captured vividly and felt naturally, can shift an entire identity. Imagine yourself already living the desire, not in a grand celebration, but in a quiet, everyday scenario. That's where the wish-fulfilled Neville method becomes real. It's not about fireworks, it's about familiarity. It's about stepping into a life that feels like it belongs to you. Picture someone who wants financial freedom. Instead of imagining millions falling from the sky, they might visualize something simple, checking an account and feeling relaxed instead of anxious, or casually tapping a card without thinking, or paying for something small without hesitation. These scenes feel real because they're rooted in daily life. Becoming it first. Neville Goddard style begins with practicing the ordinary moments of a new identity, not the extremes. This is where imagination creates reality, becomes more than a concept. When someone imagines a simple moment, their nervous system responds as if it's happening now. The breath changes, the shoulders relax, the internal dialogue shifts. They begin to feel the naturalness of the wish fulfilled without forcing it. Feeling it real explained becomes clear through experience. The body believes what the mind consistently entertains. Think of a person manifesting love. Instead of imagining a wedding or a dramatic confession, they might imagine something subtle, waking up next to someone and feeling peace, laughing over breakfast, sharing a quiet inside joke. It's these small scenes that Neville said were the most potent because they imply a fulfilled end. They carry the identity shift law of assumption far more effectively than extravagant fantasies. Even for someone manifesting health, the same principle applies. They might imagine bending down effortlessly, waking with energy, or walking upstairs with ease. These tiny scenes trigger the identity of "I am healthy," which is far more powerful than trying to visualize dramatic miracles. Assumption thrives in simplicity because simplicity feels natural, and naturalness is the key. The magic happens when a person fully enters the scene, not as a spectator watching themselves, but as the version of themselves who is living it. They feel the scene from within. They notice the weight of their steps, the tone of their voice, even the quality of their breathing. When they access that version of themselves, the identity becomes familiar, and when it becomes familiar, the law of assumption begins rearranging reality. Some people say, "But I'm not a visual person." Neville addressed this decades ago. Feeling is more important than perfect imagery. Even a blurry scene works if the emotion is clear. You don't need HD visualization, you need emotional clarity. If you can feel the calm confidence, the relief, the subtle joy, then you've connected with the state. The subconscious doesn't need visuals, it responds to the lived sensation. Practice is not about repetition, it's about immersion. One deeply felt moment is more powerful than hours of unfocused imagining. Neville often said that a single scene, looped until it feels natural, is enough to shift identity. Think of it like rehearsing a role until it stops feeling like acting and starts feeling like you. When it becomes automatic, that's when creation is finished. Neville's style begins expressing outwardly. This practice also reveals who you've been identifying as. When you try to imagine the fulfilled version of yourself, you might notice resistance or discomfort. That's not failure, that's feedback. It shows you where the old identity still has a grip, and each time you revisit the scene, you weaken that grip, gently, consistently, without pressure. As this practice deepens, something subtle happens. You start walking differently in your daily life. You speak with more certainty. You think from the end instead of about the end. And soon, the simple moments you imagined begin to appear in the 3D world, which naturally leads to the next step. Understanding how feeling becomes the bridge that carries you into this new state. There's a moment in the manifestation process when thinking isn't enough, imagining isn't enough, and even repeating affirmations feels hollow. That's because the real shift doesn't happen in the mind, it happens in the body. Neville Goddard emphasized that feeling is the secret, because feeling is what closes the gap between wanting and being. The moment gratitude, certainty, or relief washes over someone, the desire stops being an idea and becomes a lived experience. It becomes a state they've entered, not a dream they're chasing. Imagine a person who's been trying to manifest financial freedom. They visualize, they affirm, they hope, but nothing changes until one day, during a simple moment of imagining the wish fulfilled, Neville style, something softens inside them. Their breath deepens, their shoulders drop. They feel safe for the first time in years. That feeling, relief, is the bridge. It signals the identity shift law of assumption more powerfully than any words. It tells the subconscious, we're here now. Feeling is the only language the subconscious understands. Someone can recite affirmations 1,000 times, but if they feel lack underneath, the lack is what gets impressed. But when they feel even a few seconds of certainty, of this is already mine, the shift is instant. They've crossed from wanting to receiving. It's the same way you know a memory is real, you feel it. And because imagination creates reality, once the feeling is impressed, the world must reflect it. Think of a person manifesting love. They might imagine holding hands, sharing laughter, or feeling cherished. But the real transformation happens the moment they feel warmth in their chest, a tingling in their skin, or a gentle wave of affection. That feeling aligns them with the state where love already exists. It's not forced, it's not dramatic, it's subtle, like slipping into a familiar room. That's when the 3D world begins shifting around their new inner posture. Gratitude is another powerful bridge. Not the fake gratitude people force, but the natural gratitude that arises when someone truly lives in the end. When they feel grateful because they've assumed the end, Neville Goddard taught, not because they're trying to get something, they've entered the state. Gratitude implies possession, and possession implies identity. You don't feel grateful for something you don't have. You feel grateful because it's already true in your consciousness. Certainty is equally transformative. Some people describe it as a quiet knowing. No excitement, no anxiety, just a calm conviction. When someone reaches that state, they stop checking the 3D for signs. They stop asking when or how. They simply know. This certainty is the byproduct of becoming it first, Neville Goddard style. It doesn't require effort. It reveals itself naturally once the state has been fully entered. Even relief is a sign of alignment. Relief means the mind is no longer fighting the desire. The body is no longer holding tension around not having. When someone feels relief, they've released resistance. And the release, ironically, is what allows the desire to flow in. Feeling it real explained is simply this. When the body relaxes into the end, the universe responds to that relaxation as truth. Feelings also act as internal indicators. If someone feels anxious, desperate, or impatient during their imagining, it's a sign they're still in the state of wanting. That's not failure, it's guidance. The goal is to gently shift into emotions that match the fulfilled state. Calm, gratitude, contentment, assurance. Even a small taste of these is enough to begin altering reality, because states do not require intensity. They require authenticity. Neville often said that the feeling of the wish fulfilled must be the dominant experience, not a momentary spark. But dominance doesn't mean effort. It means the feeling becomes familiar enough to return to naturally, like a favorite memory. Once gratitude, certainty, or relief becomes the default emotional atmosphere, the manifestation is inevitable. It's already done internally, and creation is finished. Neville style ensures it must appear externally. As this emotional alignment deepens, something beautiful happens. The 3D world begins testing the new identity, and how you respond to those tests determines whether the state stabilizes or collapses, which naturally leads us to the next topic. There comes a point in every transformation where the outer world seems to contradict your inner shift. Neville Goddard called this the bridge of incidents, but most people misinterpret it as failure. They assume something is going wrong when, in truth, everything is unfolding exactly as it should. When the 3D world tests you, it's not trying to punish you. It's reflecting the final remnants of your old identity. This is the moment when becoming it first, Neville Goddard style, matters most. Because if you revert now, you teach the subconscious that the old state is still your truth. Imagine a person who's been working on the identity shift law of assumption for abundance. They've been feeling calm, secure, and aligned. Then suddenly, An unexpected bill arrives or a deal falls through. The old self panics, but the fulfilled self, they breathe, they stay anchored. They say, "This means nothing." And because imagination creates reality, the self they persist in will override the temporary appearance. The mirror must eventually adjust to the new face you're holding. Neville used the example of a man who assumes he is wealthy, but still wakes up in the same modest home. Nothing changes immediately, but the inner shift begins shaping his decisions, his behavior, and eventually his environment. Persistence is the glue. Feeling it real explained is not about feeling good all the time. It's about refusing to abandon the state you've chosen. Even when the world appears unchanged, the seed is already growing beneath the soil. Think of persistence like teaching a muscle a new movement. The first few reps feel awkward. The old habit tries to take over, but with repetition, the new pattern becomes the default. Manifestation works the same way. When someone chooses the wish-fulfilled Neville method, the world must reorganize itself, but during that reorganization, the old structures may tremble, shift, or even appear to collapse. That's not failure. It's clearing the field for the new identity. Some people experience old triggers resurfacing. An argument, a fear, a familiar setback. This is not a sign to stop. This is proof you've shifted states. The old state is dissolving, and its echoes are fading out. Neville explained that these echoes have no power unless you give them meaning. When you stay calm, remain inwardly convinced, or simply choose not to react, you neutralize the old pattern. You starve it of identity. In relationships, this is especially visible. A person may assume the identity of being loved, only to have a moment of silence, distance, or misunderstanding arise. The old self interprets it as rejection, but the fulfilled self sees it as irrelevant noise, a temporary flicker in the mirror. When they persist in the identity of someone chosen, valued, and cherished, the relationship eventually reflects that truth. Live in the end isn't a feeling, it's a stance. Think of the 3D world like a delayed playback. You change the inner broadcast, but the screen may take a moment to refresh. During that delay, old frames may still appear, but they're outdated. They're no longer connected to the signal you're sending. Persistence means ignoring the frames and trusting the broadcast. Creation is finished, Neville taught, and the state you occupy is the only thing that matters. Even in health manifestations, the same principle applies. Symptoms may flare up even as you assume wellness. That's not regression. It's the old state releasing its grip. The key is to respond as your fulfilled self would. Not with panic, but with quiet assurance. Not with fear, but with neutrality. That is what stabilizes the new identity and invites the physical world to catch up. The test is never about the situation. It's always about who you choose to be in the face of it. Do you return to the old identity, or do you anchor into the new one? When you persist, the world eventually reshapes itself because it must. The mirror does not lead, it only follows. And as the mirror begins reflecting your new identity, subtle signs start appearing, which is exactly what the next topic reveals. There's a subtle moment in the manifestation journey where something shifts, not in the world, but inside you. People often expect the first signs of change to be external, but Neville Goddard taught that the earliest evidence always shows up internally. Calm confidence is usually the very first indicator. Not excitement, not euphoria, just a grounded sense of, "I'm not worried anymore." That's when you know you've stepped into the wish-fulfilled Neville method. The desire stops feeling far away and starts feeling like a quiet fact. Imagine someone who's been practicing becoming it first Neville Goddard style with abundance. One day, without forcing it, they look at a bill and feel nothing. No anxiety, no tension, just neutrality. That neutrality is profound. It means they're no longer living in the state of lack. Neville would say that imagination creates reality, and this calmness is the proof that the identity shift law of assumption has taken root. The outer world hasn't changed yet, but the inner weather has transformed. Another sign is new impulses, subtle nudges to take small actions that align with the new identity. A person assuming wealth might suddenly feel drawn to organizing their finances, exploring new opportunities, or expressing generosity in small ways. Someone assuming love may feel a natural impulse to take better care of themselves or communicate more warmly. These impulses aren't forced. They arise effortlessly because the new identity is beginning to lead. Synchronicities also start showing up, little coincidences that match the state you've entered. You overhear conversations about your desire. You stumble upon a message that feels like it was meant for you. Someone unexpectedly offers help or information. Neville often said that these signs aren't manifestations themselves. They're the ripples created by the state you now occupy. They remind you that creation is finished Neville style, and reality is simply aligning piece by piece. One of the strongest signs you've shifted is when old triggers lose their power. Situations that used to unsettle you now barely register. You find yourself responding differently. Not because you're trying, but because the old identity simply doesn't fit anymore. That's calm confidence in action. It means you're living from the end Neville Goddard taught, not trying to get to it. The new identity has begun rewriting your reactions automatically. You may also notice that you stop talking about your desire so much, not because you're avoiding it, but because it no longer feels like something you're chasing. You don't need to discuss what you already feel is done. This internal quietness is a powerful indicator. The desire becomes less of a topic and more of an inner truth. Feeling it real explained suddenly makes perfect sense, because the feeling has become consistent, not episodic. Another early sign is that you start making decisions from your new identity instead of toward it. A person embodying health may instinctively choose rest or nourishment. Someone embodying abundance may begin spending differently, not recklessly, but confidently. Someone embodying love may stop settling for situations that don't match their worth. These are not conscious strategies. They are natural expressions of who you've become. Sometimes you'll even catch yourself thinking thoughts that surprise you in a good way. Thoughts like, "Of course things work out for me," or "I just know this is mine," or "This is who I am now." These aren't affirmations. You didn't intentionally create them. They arise spontaneously because the subconscious has accepted the new state as home. And perhaps the most beautiful early sign is a gentle sense of inevitability. Not arrogance, not entitlement, just the quiet understanding that your desire is already yours in consciousness and therefore must appear. Neville called this the feeling of certainty. And once it arrives, the old anxiety dissolves. You're no longer waiting, you're living. And when you live from the fulfilled state, you're already practicing deep embodiment, which leads directly into the next topic. There comes a moment when the entire manifestation process becomes effortless, almost invisible. This is the stage Neville Goddard referred to as embodiment. It's when you stop performing techniques, stop checking the mirror of the 3D world, and stop wondering when things will finally shift. Instead, you begin being the version of yourself who already has the desire, not pretending, not hoping, simply living from the identity that the wish-fulfilled Neville method has already created within you. This is when the inner work transforms into a new way of existing. Imagine someone who spent weeks visualizing abundance. At first they had to try. They practiced feeling it real explained in their mind, repeating scenes, looping emotions. But one day, they wake up and realize they're no longer trying to feel abundant, they just are. Their decisions reflect abundance. Their words reflect abundance. Their posture reflects abundance. This is deep embodiment. The identity shift law of assumption has fully settled into their subconscious, and the old identity has fallen away. Deep embodiment is quiet. There's no rush of emotion, no dramatic moment of realization. Instead, there's a soft certainty that guides you. You stop asking questions like, "Is it working?" Because that question doesn't make sense anymore. A person who embodies health doesn't ask, "Am I healthy yet?" A person who embodies love doesn't ask, "Am I chosen?" When you live in the end Neville Goddard style, the desire becomes irrelevant as a desire. It becomes a natural extension of who you are. This is when trying becomes unnecessary. Trying only exists in the state of not being. When you embody something, you don't try, you express. Just like someone who plays the piano doesn't try to be a pianist anymore. They simply play. Someone who embodies abundance doesn't try to believe in wealth. They simply make choices that wealthy people make. Someone who embodies confidence doesn't try to appear confident. They speak and move with ease because the identity has taken root. When Neville said creation is finished, this is what he meant. You are simply selecting the state, and once the state is chosen, the embodiment of that state begins to live through you. The world then rearranges itself to match. Reality follows your lead because it has no authority of its own. The 3D world is not the cause, it is the echo. And once you're firmly grounded in your new identity, the echo begins to sound different. Deep embodiment also shows up in how you handle challenges. The version of you who already has the desire does not fall apart when circumstances wobble. They remain steady. They respond as their fulfilled self would respond. Someone embodying love communicates with openness instead of fear. Someone embodying abundance acts from clarity instead of desperation. Someone embodying success makes decisions from confidence, not scarcity. These reactions are not intentional, they're natural. Even your internal dialogue shifts. You begin thinking from the end rather than about the end. Instead of wondering how will it happen, you naturally think, when it shows up, You plan from your new reality. You navigate choices as if your desire is already established. This isn't delusion. It's the essence of imagination creates reality. The inner world becomes the blueprint for the outer world, and embodiment is what holds that blueprint in place. Another sign of deep embodiment is the absence of urgency. You no longer obsess over timing. You don't need to accelerate anything or check progress constantly. You know it's done, and because you know it's done, your nervous system relaxes. This inner rest is exactly the fulfillment Neville described. You've moved from wanting to knowing, from searching to being, from separation to identity. Deep embodiment doesn't feel like doing manifestation. It feels like living normally, but from a new center. The desire is no longer a dream you're reaching for. It becomes the starting point of your every thought. You walk differently, you speak differently, you choose differently, and because you are different, life must respond differently. It can't do anything else. The mirror has no power except to reflect who stands before it. And once you understand this stage of embodiment, the final realization becomes clear. You become it first, and then it appears. Which brings us into the last topic of this journey. This is the moment when everything Neville Goddard ever taught comes together with crystal clarity. Every desire, every shift, every manifestation follows one simple principle. You become it first, not second, not after the evidence, not when circumstances finally behave. You become it now, and the world, with all its moving parts, eventually rearranges itself to reflect your inner decision. This is the essence of the wish-fulfilled Neville method. Identity creates reality, not the other way around. The inner world leads, the outer world follows. Imagine someone who has struggled for years to change their life through willpower, strategy, or hard work. They chased opportunities, forced timelines, and tried to control outcomes. But nothing truly changed until the day they stopped trying to manipulate the mirror and changed the face they were bringing to it. That's when everything shifted, because imagination creates reality, and identity is the line of code that programs it. The outer world cannot help but reflect the inner state you consistently occupy. Neville often said the world is a stage, and every person plays the role their state dictates. When you embody abundance, you play the role of someone who naturally experiences abundance. When you embody love, you move like someone who is already loved. When you embody success, your decisions and behaviors reflect that identity. You don't fake it, you become it, and that state becomes the cause of everything that follows. Feeling it real explained is simply, identity is the seed and reality is the fruit. Think of a person manifesting love. They stop checking their phone, stop doubting their worth, and stop acting like someone waiting to be chosen. Instead, they stand, speak, and move like someone who is chosen. This doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from quiet certainty. And because creation is finished Neville style, life must bring them the people, experiences, and opportunities that match that certainty. Not because they begged for it, but because they became it. Identity is not a costume you wear, it's a frequency you hold, and the world is a perfect echo chamber. When your internal frequency changes, your external circumstances have no choice but to reflect the new tone. This is why becoming it first Neville Goddard style is the only method that truly works. Action without identity collapses. Identity without action automatically creates aligned action. It's effortless alignment instead of forced effort. Some people try to manifest by thinking positively or repeating affirmations, but nothing sticks until the identity shifts. You can say, "I am wealthy" 1,000 times, but if you still feel like someone struggling, the subconscious will reject the affirmation. But the moment you become someone who feels financially safe, even if just for a moment, the inner climate changes, and the outer world follows the climate, not the words. The beauty of this truth is its reliability. You don't need luck, you don't need timing, you don't need permission. The state you choose today writes the script for your tomorrow. Neville taught that living in the end is not escapism, it's authorship. It's deciding who you are and letting reality catch up. The moment you shift identity, you've already changed your fate. Everything else is a delayed reflection. Even resistance dissolves when identity becomes the anchor. You no longer fear setbacks, because setbacks no longer define you. You don't react from panic. You respond from certainty. When someone becomes their fulfilled self, the world's old patterns lose their grip. You stop chasing signs. Signs start chasing you. Synchronicities intensify. Doors open. People shift. Opportunities land without effort. And you finally understand what Neville meant when he said, "The world is yourself pushed out." At its core, manifestation is not about convincing the world, it's about convincing yourself. Once you've become the version of you who already has the desire is no longer a desire but an identity. And from that identity, the appearance is inevitable. It must happen, not because you forced it, but because identity is the cause of all unfolding. And with that truth fully understood, a new question naturally arises within you, one that sets the stage for everything that comes next. There comes a moment when a person realizes they've been trying to rearrange the mirror instead of changing the face they're bringing to it. And maybe that moment is happening for you right now. Because if you've truly understood Neville Goddard's teaching, then you already know the truth you can't unknow anymore. You become it first, and then it appears. The question now isn't whether it works. The question is, who are you choosing to be when you wake up tomorrow? Are you willing to release the old identity that kept you looping in the same patterns? Are you ready to step into the version of yourself who breathes differently, chooses differently, and expects differently? Are you ready to live from the end instead of reaching for it? Your world can only mirror who you decide to be. So decide boldly, decide consciously, and decide now. If this message opened something inside you, then don't let it fade. There is so much more for you to understand, embody, and create. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay close, because every video here exists to help you remember who you really are and who you're finally ready to become.